Team, welcome back everyone. Day 8 for our Selenium automation training. So what is it that we were doing? We went into a little bit of Java. We started to write some simple Selenium WebDriver code, and we put them into a Eclipse project, into a project that we created under Eclipse IDE. So here we were playing around with a lot of simple codes, right from a simple hello statements to be printed to what we did yesterday. So let's take a look at the code that we did yesterday and what have we achieved in this code. So it is always important for us to look at the scenarios from a perspective of how they're getting executed, team. It is always beginning at the first line and going all the way to the end. Most important aspect for you to remember is that every Java program must have a main method. So that's like my starting point. And the end of that main method becomes my ending point. To talk about a block of code in Java, we use curly brackets. Curly brackets basically, as we go write more functions and methods, you'll understand what they do, but nothing but combining a piece of code into one segment, into one portion. It could be for as simple as organizing our code so that it will look good, to be able to use it as a reusable component. I hope everyone can hear me. Audio okay? Please check at your end. All can hear fine. All right, so audio is fine, so please kindly check at your end. Now, what is it that our code is doing? At the very beginning of the main method, we have our beginning of the block. So if you see, there's a minus sign to the left of it. So when I click on it, it will minimize that entire block and show me, okay, my block is here. So as I keep writing programs, Eclipse IDE will be able to give that information to you. Okay, so team, for those of you who cannot hear, I'll just put one, try and re-log in. Issue seems to be at your end. Okay, so let's expand this. Why is this expansion and all this provided? This is not something that Java gives you. It is Eclipse IDE, team. So do understand the clarity between what we're trying to achieve here. So your Java programs 1 to n, the different number of programs, you organize them into projects or whatever, are there within Eclipse just to maintain, to edit and so on. I can also do it using Notepad. I can do it using anything. So these features that you see of highlighting, colors, or this plus minus are given to you as features by Eclipse. It does not have anything to do with a Java program team. So be noted about that. It is the core code, but IDEs help you to look at these much better. So slowly you're kind of getting exposed to what IDEs can do. Now, what is it that my main method does? We still to get to public static void or class or imports or throws and exceptions. But what is it that my main method does? Line number 8 is my start of the test, and somewhere towards the end is line number 67. And is our code readable like English for us to understand? And that is where, wherever possible, as you go in through your initial programming days, make sure you write comments, team. Without the comments, this code will look much smaller, but may not be user friendly for you to maintain. So give comments wherever we can. So this is an easy statement for us to understand. Then we're saying we want to start my test and execute these things. And we're saying in the first time I'm doing yoga, and that is what I'm searching for, and I'm getting an expected result. What is it that I'm doing? Then is there another test? Do you see this? And at this time, It is not doing a search, it is doing something else. But let's take a deeper look and then execute it. So for us team, to become programmer, to be a good programmer, you need to be able to run the code in your mind before letting an IDE help to execute. So what does it mean, team? Very simple. Line by line, you think of what that issue, what it will do at each point. Some of them are easy to understand, some of them are not. Some of them you have to accept. So the first one is WebDriver, MyDriver. In this, it's kind of very simple. It basically is creating a complete entity of an object and it keeps that aside. What are objects and how they're different from variables? We will explore them today, team. Now, this is just created an empty box called WebDriver. Then we are setting it to Chrome driver. And then we are saying, let's maximize the window. We're going to that application and maximizing the window. Now comes my first test where I'm sending a keyword called yoga and I'm expecting text here called trending, and that is what I'm running against. Now there is another test after this. So if my expected and actual text is the same, then I'm saying okay, pass or fail. Else I'm saying let's do another test. Again, I'm starting the browser and I'm going through that whole process, team. So how is this test executing as is? Let us see. We have not gone through that if statement or variables yet. We will explore them now. Okay, so let's execute this test as is. Then we're going to save a version and write a simple JUnit test. Are you all able to get started with very simple testing team, writing the simple codes on Eclipse? Are you able to catch up with practice as we do these sessions? Okay, excellent. Seems like something is happening, but there is an error. Now, one of our primary jobs that keeps us going towards being a good programmer is our skill to debug, find the source of an issue and resolve it. Now, team, this code is very tough to look at as we see. Let us try and do something in a much more simpler way, and let's introduce ourselves to JUnit. What is JUnit and how is it different? Okay, JUnit is nothing but a Java framework built to handle unit testing by developers team. So it was never actually built for testers to begin with. But then the features that come with it also help test engineers to be able to work on them. Now, how do we write our basic JUnit test? In any Java code, if I have to write, I'll say out here SLT September project 2. I'll just put it here. New, right click on the source, and I'll say class simple Java class. All right. And the most important thing that we do is we check this public static void main. Once I do this, I have my main class and I can do whatever I want within this. So my whole execution starts with that endpoint. This is a simple Java program. Okay. Now the same thing when I write within JUnit, JUnit approaches the whole thing a little differently. So that we are kind of going still slow team. I'm kind of going in deep into Java and JUnit right now. We will create a simple data driven framework, it'll get our coding skills very well established. Okay, where were we? Java program. So if you take a Java program, it's very simple. Line 1, 2, 3, 4, all the way to n. It'll go in a sequential manner, one step at a time. That's about how it does. Now, when it comes to testing a QA process, how is it that we do testing team? And this is what the developers have kind of realized. When we have to do testing, I have to prepare the test, be it my data, be it my environment, be it my user logins, credentials, all of this. And then I have to run the test. I'll write it. And I have to report the test, or yeah, report the test. So how is this cycle different from a regular development cycle? Regular development cycle could be like a waterfall or a series of waterfalls they go through as a process. For us, what happens is all this test that you see here, this entire step of 1 to n becomes one test for me team. And this way, I have to run hundreds of tests out here. And each time when I run it, I have to prepare my test, execute it, and again report the defects. So this becomes a tedious task. So to make this process easy came the JUnit framework. Basically saying my unit testing is done. What is unit testing team? One of the fundamental testings that we look at an application, break it down into test units, test cases, and test them one by one. Now the same thing when I want to do with JUnit, it's very simple team. I say file new class, and I'll call this as JUnit1. This time I'll have nothing called as main team, and I say finish. Out here, JUnit is all about annotations and what they do. Then comes in terms of you can passing arguments, understanding JUnit, test results. Okay, now let's run a very simple JUnit testing. How are we going to do that? There are three annotations that I want to do. See, there's a before a test. What is it that I want to do? After a test is done, what I want to do, and during a test or is actual test run itself. Okay. Now, if you notice, there is no main method here. All I'll say is public static void my before test. It is a name that I'm giving myself to it. And to be able to say what I want to do here, I'll say this simple print statement before my test. Okay. Similarly, I'll do one for each of these. See, they're not going to get executed one by one or in that order. It is going to depend on how we want to call them when. So three functions depending on the hierarchy on how preparation, execution, and reporting. Okay, so my before test, my test, and after my test. Now, if I save this and I execute this test, there is basically, oops, now it's executing the other one. right click, run as, it doesn't even recognize it because there's no main method. Now for Java, for it to recognize it that it is a JUnit, what we use are annotations. Annotations are simple representation that whatever follows this statement is my before. There are only three main annotations that you need to consider, team: at test and at after. There are few variations, but this becomes our base. As is, your Java system library will not have anything to do with JUnit. You need to be able to import these packages. So you don't have JUnit already aligned to a team. So right click, go to properties, Java build path. In the libraries, we just have the Selenium server standalone. At this point, what you do is go to Google and just say JUnit jar download. Okay. We will keep talking a lot about Java archived resources or jar files team, and we will get the latest one. Download JUnit jar. JUnit jar is here. There's a Hamcrest jar also that's needed, but I don't know if it is needed right away. Let's see. Let's download this. Keep show in folder. I'm going to take this and put it into our training drivers. So I have a couple of them. Show in folder, Control X and Control V. So that's my latest one. Let's also get the Hamcrest. These are all the needed ones, team. As a learner of what we need to be doing, let me go to this. So I want you to ignore certain aspects and focus on the core team. Okay, there are 1,000 questions that require answers when we start working with Java, and especially Selenium, and then you add frameworks to it. So you have to focus razor sharp on what we're trying to do, team. So JUnit is like I was saying, it's a Java library or a framework, team. It helps us to better manage and run this test. When I write simple JUnit test, you'll understand. So it does not recognize these. If I take my mouse over, it doesn't have any fixes for it. Now, when I right click and go to properties, my Java build path, click on add external jars, and I get my JUnit and say apply and say okay. Now you take your mouse over it, it will give you the option to import. So these imports basically say now I want to use the before.org.junit. Then similarly, I want to use the at test annotation. Now what is it that these things do is very surprising, team. Okay, so if I run this code, now see what will happen. I'm saying as a JUnit test, say okay. Oopsie, what happened? Is it the Hamcrest issue? Where is the error? It gave me an initialization error. Hamcrest, yeah. See, it's saying that it also requires that. Um, let's assign that to team. Again, pretty simple. Right click, go to properties, your Java build path, libraries, add external jars. I don't think I downloaded that. Ting, 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 ting. Downloads, jar. It's downloading this. Show in folder, Control X. And then our folder. So I put it there. Now let's import it. Is everyone understanding what we're doing, team? Whatever are the needed jars, we're slowly importing them one by one. We don't have a book list saying that, oh, okay, I need to do A, B, C, D. As you keep using, Keep importing, keep using them, team. You do not want to import more than what you already have. Now let's execute this again. Why is it running, launching my other test? I didn't understand this. Let me do one thing. It's still running that testing. I'm going to right click on my test and do it. Easiest way first is close all of it. I'll open up JUnit 1, right click and say run as JUnit test. Again, initialization error. Okay, should not be static. Oh, sorry, public void. It's only one static we have. Okay, there we go. So here is a simple JUnit code, team. All it does is says, okay, I have 3 sets: before a test, after a test, out here, and during a test. Now look at what it does, team. This is one test of mine. Okay, I can create one more test, and let's say I call this as my test 1, and this is my test 1, my test 2, my test 2. And now if I execute this, if you notice, team, before every test my add before will get executed, and after every test my after test will get executed. The same thing repeated. So if to represent the same thing as a diagram, so you have this prepare test. Let's take a different color. So this is one portion. I can have X number of tests, and I can have one more report test or after test. What is it that I can do? So if I change this now, if you noticed, every time it'll execute something before, something after. Now let's say, oh, this is already saved as JUnit 1. Now let's write a simple code like this. Control A, Control C, and we had DDF2, right? I'll say new or source new class DDF3 underscore JUnit. So we're kind of getting a little bit of JUnit into it. Another day, team, JUnit will be very clear for you what it can do and so on. But till then, just keep it very basic. No main method in it, say finish. Nothing here, paste that code. All that I need to change is the name of my class. So I'll change it to DDF3 underscore JUnit. Okay. Now look at the beauty of what we could do. I have ddf2.java. Whenever I want to run a test, there are a bunch of things that I need to do. Correcting. For example, I'm going to work on YouTube itself. So I know that to start my test, I need to create a WebDriver, and I'm setting this property, setting it to Chrome driver, YouTube, and maximizing it. And then I'm going about all of these processes, correct? So now I could run individual tests like this. I'm going to copy this. And now instead of putting everything into main, I'm going to put this into my before test. So before my test gets executed, I want these steps. Okay, let's just put one test for now. Okay, and I'm gonna delete these comments. Now we know what they do. So we're getting better at understanding this code. The art of learning automation coding, team, is to keep kind of repeating, doing it over and over. Now, what's my main test that is doing? It will find the element, it'll wait for a couple of seconds, it's gonna do a bunch of things and kind of come out of it, right? Ting, 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 ting. Control C. So I'm only doing one test for now, team. Then finally, I need to close. Now, team, I'm going to do a very quick fix to show you what I'm doing. I have not got to variables or objects, different types of variables, their lifespan or access limitations and so on. We will, but for now, there is one change that I need to do. I need to make my WebDriver a little global object, not a little overall a global object. And I'm going to take it and put it somewhere here at my class level. So that way, anywhere in the class, it is recognizable. Still assuming theme, there are certain things that you're still looking at. Now, if I minimize these, you'll notice that I have very simple things. I actually have only one my test one. Then my test two, I've still not kind of seen it. There is nothing in it. But what is there in my test one? Let us see. Why do you think thread.sleep of 2000 seconds is failing? You would have noticed this had you seen it in the previous ones. Why is there a red line on line 29? What's wrong with it, team, there? So what happens with Java or other programming language is they have the power to interact with the base system. And when you're interacting for the system to do certain commands, there are a lot of exceptions, issues, errors that pop up. So we need to consciously say that I'm aware of what I'm putting, and if an exception handles, I need to be able to handle it. That is all it means as of now. So anytime you want to sleep, you should say that my test should be able to handle exception. So if I say throws exception, it kind of, okay, it'll accept it and it'll say, okay, I'm good with it. What happened to here? Throws exception is correct. Let me take my mouse over, add throws declaration. Throws just an exception. That's what I wrote, but maybe upper lowercase. So yeah, after brackets. Thank you. That was right. I did it after brackets now. So it basically is an additional word. So our duty is to make sure these red lines are also taken off, but not at the cost of the functionality of what has to happen. Anyone confused so far? Let's simplify this once again. My before test, it will point to Chrome driver. It will launch YouTube. It will go to my test. It's going to execute this and do all of this. And then my after test should close it. So let's run it as is team. Okay. So we're going to say it as JUnit test. So there's no error there. Now starts my second test. Did you notice? The browser still gets launched for my second test. Though there is nothing in it, then what is it that it's executing? Always the information that we have within here. Okay, so now look at what we could do. In our DDF2, we had another test, right? I said, okay, this is my first test, and here's my second test. My second test, again, I'm saying, let's set the property to so and so, navigate, thread.sleep. So from here, we've kind of have some steps. So I'm going to copy this back to ddf3 underscore junit and put it out here. So the same thing for the sleep command here. So we're just saying that any exception for now. And I think all it is doing, which this doesn't say, is ting ting ting, makes my Java code wait for 2 seconds. Identifier ID. I don't even remember what it does. Change the XPath for sign in. Where is sign in? I don't know where sign in is. But I'm not interested in mastering this script team at the moment. What I want to know is how we are giving in the entire test to execute from a JUnit perspective. So now see what happens, team. Diagram wise, okay, I'll have one at before, I'll have one at after, and I can have test 1 to test n. So each time before and then after. So each time before that gets executed, then the test, and then the after. So that sequence keeps continuing. Remember that in the mind. Let's execute this now and see. Did it execute? I did not notice it fully. So both have executed. I do see there is one error, team. When errors occur, there are multiple reasons for it. And this is where I want you to know at a basic level the possible culprits of why errors do occur. And we will do a lot of exploring on it. There are three basic reasons, team, why errors occur. The first is your application under test is at fault. There is actually a defect that you need to reproduce, make sure it is valid, and log it. The other thing is what you have given as a data, be it test data or element identification, that itself is incorrect. So your test won't get executed correctly. The last one is your framework. Let us say your framework ain't coded correctly. It's not doing what it's supposed to do. When I say framework, even simple tests, any of these could be the culprits. When an issue happens, do not doubt the application under test to begin with. This will be your third suspect. Okay. Your first suspect always will start with your data. Did I give the element identification correct? Is test data correct? Of course, equally important is your code is correct. If your code was not correct, you wouldn't have written code enough to get till that data. So now we find an error. And this is where for us, it is very critical on how we do debugging. And team, debugging is not just about running it in debug mode, having checkpoints, breakpoints, prints and logs and so on. It is also as simple as what is happening by looking at the test code. Okay. Now see, one of the most important things for you to understand is what kind of an error this is. Is it a syntax error or a runtime error, team? Syntax error or runtime error. There are two types of errors that we discussed that come up with Java programming. Syntax means the syntax is wrong. Syntax as an English meaning is how we write things in a specific format. That format is essential. So it's like a language. You cannot mess around with it. Runtime error is when you're executing, the errors will pop up. This becomes your runtime error. And for us to identify runtime, somewhere during the execution it happened. It did not happen at 0 seconds. It ran for a few seconds, about 13 seconds, and then it threw an error. Here is where we have to dig deep and find out. Our console just gives us basic, information. But what happened to my test to test? First of all, there's something wrong here. End of test two. Okay. Oh, see, this is coming end of my test. Then that's the correct one. Test for my test. Let's run again to get the latest team. Just one test, quick one. All right, great. So now team, look at what has happened. The whole point is that JUnit report is much different from a regular Java report. Your regular Java report, if you execute, there is nothing much there. It'll give you information in console, and there is nothing that you will see as a JUnit report coming up. Now, how is this JUnit report different from this? First and foremost, it tells you how many tests you have run, okay, and how many out of how many. It also tells me how many errors have happened. So I can actually go to each test, find out how long it took and what happened at that test. So all passed in that. But the second one, it took shorter time, but it failed. So when I look at that, double click and I look at that failure trace, this is where you have to be smart about putting a little patience in mind, understanding what could have happened. So to begin with, the first thing what you do, team, go to the last line in the failure trace. That would tell me, remember this Java line numbers we were simply looking at initially? It would tell me where in there is the issue. So if I double click it, it'll take me to that line. So if I'm on a line 52, double click, it'll take me there. It basically says that in my second test, I was trying to identify something and it was not working. I don't even remember what my second test was. But what we're trying to do is, uh, so in my at before, I don't need this test. I'm just navigating. Here I'm sleeping and I'm finding an element which is failing. Okay, but what am I doing after I find that element? We're clicking. What button are we trying to click, team, here? Click on sign in link, is it? So that is what was failing. Okay, so let's see what was failing, this sign in link. So inspect, right click, once again, inspect, ID equals text. This ID equals text. Are there too many with ID equals text? There is paper hyphen button, ID equals button. What do I have? Star ID equals button should work. What did it say? Now the error, it says element not interactable exception. That is the issue. Why is this element not interactable? The outer element may not be interactable. Maybe the inner element is interactable. So if I change this and say at text equals sign in, will that work? How do we write at text equals sign in, team? Wrong path, yes. Div ID buttons, YD button, okay. So maybe if right clicked to get that, so right click, copy XPath, let's see what it gave. This is ID equals text. Yeah, this worked too. Let me now just try to run this. Single quote, single quote, and we can rerun, but I don't want to run my first one, so I'll just comment the at test. That way it doesn't recognize it. It'll only execute my second one. So it is part of slow debugging team, one by one trying to identify where what could be going wrong and still playing around, still trying to experiment and see if it works. So it did execute, but again, it came the same thing. Where did I change? Not get text. So here, same line. This also didn't work. Now, what is the other option that we have? Let's see. Maybe we will use the hyphen label equals sign in. There are so many of it. Let's do one thing. Let's open Chrome. YouTube.com. I won't get Selenium IDE in it. That's fine, team. I'll figure out. There was one or two suggestions of what I could do. Don't want to go into the depth of XPath right away, team, where I combine few more, but let me try one more or two more options. So this didn't work. At ID equals text. I'm still here. YT-icon class. Okay. ID equals text. It's not interactive. It is not saying that, element not interactable. It is finding the element, team. It is just saying it's not interactable. What we will do is maybe we will send keyboard command to make that happen. But let's see if the one I got, let me try that, Chitra. If that comes out. Questions. Why can't I copy what you wrote in the chat? I can't copy from chat, unfortunately. Don't know why. Okay, that's fine. So team, let's see, where are we now? Two tests return in JUnit, but only one of them we kind of executing right now. Now, let's talk about designing a data-driven framework with this basic JUnit concept, team, and how we can go about executing it. So to do that, team, I will take a simple example as another one, and quickly we can get to read data. YouTube, let's come back to it for a little bit more of keyword driven framework. Once we do a little bit more data driven framework, there's a lot of keywords that we can run out here. Okay, so how can we create a new project, team? The more projects that you do and practice, it will give you a lot more confidence. Give me 1 second, please. Definitely the application is going to be this mortgagecalculator.org. It'll give us a lot of information to play with, especially at the Java level. Any questions? Meanwhile, I'm just going to pause the recording, grab a cup of water, and come back, team. All right, team, let's get started with one more application that will give us a good hands-on on building a data-driven framework. Team, for identifying elements, I do not want you to use any tools. I want you to manually try and find it and then use tools to verify it. That is very important, please. Because once you start depending on the tools, you'll never have the ability to learn to write it. And how you write dynamic XPath, dynamic element handling, we'll spend one total session on it. Okay, so there's a lot we could do on that, but focus on writing custom element identifications. Okay, great. So team, new project. Let's speak very quickly about what it can do. We will learn a lot of basics of Java and we'll apply it into JUnit as well. So very simple. It's got a bunch of fields that we can input and click on calculate, and it'll give us an output. And that is what we could kind of compare and see what happens. So how do we do a very quick level of automation, team, for such a code? Now, instead of approaching it as a basic Java program, let us create it as a JUnit program, team. So I'll call it as a JUnit test case, and this is DDF4 underscore test. Okay, you know what? Let's start with new Java class and DDF4 JUnit underscore MC. Okay, so no main method in it. We will have an at before, an at test, and at after. Okay, so how do you write a basic test, team, to begin with? Then you can apply a data driven framework concept to it. So you have public void my before test. See how many times I'm kind of writing this code, team? That is the same thing I want you to do. The more you get dependent on, okay, copy paste of what Karthik is doing from that code, it becomes tough. Pause the video and at least then write it. All right, my test, my after test. All right, so now all that I need to do is make sure that I have the right imports. My projects always already have the libraries imported. I just have to import it for this code. Now this is done. Let's go back to the previous one. There were simple print statements. Let's get that too after my test. My test. I may be only running one test to begin with, but then I'll show you how we can do many more tests. Okay, great. So quick run as JUnit test, and I get the results. Now team, one of the things that we could not see in the earlier execution was a complete green. A complete green is all my tests have executed correctly. Drill down will show each test, how long it took, where it failed, where it executed, and so on. So there are advantages of JUnit team that you'll explore more, especially that if I have 100 tests, if test number 26 fails, it will not stop the remaining test team. It will continue to run the remaining test. It'll just capture the information for that test. Now, what is it that I want to do on this application? The first thing I want to do in my before is launch the application. So to launch the application, we have kind of a simple code. Let's learn to reuse some of these. But take these components and put them, team. Don't kind of manually take the entire code, one piece of a component at a time. So system.set property, we need to say where my property called Chrome driver is, and that is where it is located. Make sure it is correctly there, team. So anytime there's a change in here, your code will start to break. Now, before I take my mouse over line 13, what is the syntax error that is showing up there? What is the syntax error there, team? So as you keep going into it, you'll notice something called as declaration. The importance of declaring, be it a variable or an object or an array or a list or anything that we do in Java is critical before we can use it. So when I say my driver, that is a name that I have personally given. Now we will get into the naming conventions and slowly, team. Tomorrow will be a lot into core Java too. So for us to make this happen, I need to define my driver. How to define variables and these, we'll do a little bit more. So I'm putting it under class. Remember a little while ago, I was talking about the scope of objects or variables, and what are they controlled by? This curl brackets. This curl brackets basically tell me, okay, this is the start of a block of code, and if you select that or keep your mouse over it and go down, you will see the end of it. So for example, if I want to put on line 30, it should show line 28 as the end of it, vice versa. So each one is a block of code, team. So if I define something in line 7, that it is in this block of code. So what happens? Anywhere in this block of code, I can use it. But vice versa, if I define something in this block of code, I cannot use it here. So that we will learn a little bit more as we keep going. I just have to import my WebDriver as a package, and now this is set. So what is my add before doing? Just launching the application, and my application URL is different. So I'm going to copy that and put it up here. And almost the same concept of what we're doing. Now at the end, we're kind of closing it. Oopsie. Okay, and the instruction is whatever you have done in my test, I'm good with that part. Now comes my test. What I want to do, enter home value, maybe a down payment, maybe interest rate, and click on compare loan types and find this information. So how can we quickly do that, team? So to be able to work with such programs, first let's write it as a hard coded, and we'll kind of parameterize it tomorrow. So first thing, I have to use my driver. The second thing on my driver would be what, team? Now that you're in the application, you find an element and you have to use by dot. Now, do you see me using Chrome path, CrowPath, or any other tools, team? Do not. Maybe use Catalan or Selenium ID or any other tool like CrowPath, doesn't matter, only to verify, but you need to write and identify. So if I right click here and click on inspect, okay, I would get the basic properties. What is the methodology that I should? Right click on it, copy outer HTML, get it into a notepad, write your own XPath. So I'll say this is input, open square brackets at the rate ID equals home val. See, be careful of upper cases, lower cases, and everything, team. Now, am I sure that this will be the XPath? I may not be sure. So how do we ascertain that, team? What you could do is quickly open up, let us say, Catalan. I don't have Catalan. Why? Tick, 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 tick. Not, where is my Catalan? Catalan recorder was enough. Yeah, there you go. Repair extension. Okay, it seems to be doing something. Hopefully it is repaired. Looks like. So now will I be able to see? There you go. I can see Catalan. So all I'm doing is keeping my Catalan to one side, and I'm gonna try and put a target here that I copied and say found in top frame. There you go. Can you see that blinking, team? So I know for sure that this is fine. So now all I need to do is just quickly enter it by dot XPath, or you can also say by ID, team, and put this entire thing into it. Make sure you embed them into double quotes, and will be set there. Dot set, or sorry, dot send keys, and we need to send some value. I'm just gonna send 32300. Okay, that's the value I'm sending. Now that this is done, let's try for a couple more. Now what could be for the next one? Down payment, inspect. ID is down payment. So if I go to my Catalan recorder and say this is down payment all lower and say find, yep, found it. I'm going to change this now, put that value, and I'll say maybe 252500. Okay, just a couple of them. I'm not going to close it. Till here, let us run, team. Your ability to write and run hundreds of tests, small to large, is what makes you an automation engineer, team. So if you can constantly write tests, simple to large, you'll face challenges, you'll face issues, but it'll be something that you can slowly keep coming out of it. So at least we got those steps done, team. Now, what are the 2-3 more steps that we want to do? Click on calculate. So right click, inspect, and I didn't come there. Inspect. It says input type is submit, name equals cal. So what if I say what am I using? Name equals cal. And my method on it, team, is gonna be click. Okay, once I click on it, I want to sleep it for maybe 3 seconds. And once I do that, on here, I want to get this value. So inspect, and it says H3, I don't know, but I'll just do a simple trick, team. Copy X path. It'll come up as X3, I'm sure. Oh, it's got a big one. It doesn't require all this. Let's see again. Right click, copy, outer HTML, H3. Let's try just H3. Where is it? I don't see it, so it's definitely not that. Let me take what it gave. Big one. Hate to look at such an XPath, which is bound to fail in the future. But that's fine. What am I doing? H3, upper end of brackets. Another one. Dot get text. So I want to get text and I want to print that. If I say string m payment equals this, and then I say sysO m payment. All right, great. Just add the exception and we are good to roll with another simple test. Now what we have to do, team, is add data into it and talk about how we can drive these applications for various sets of changing data. So I'll see you tomorrow. We'll continue on that, team. So as of now, it has entered the information. If it is clicked on calculate, it should come. I got the value, team, and that's correct. So everything red is not a defect, so don't get scared. But the value that we see in the application is what we're able to see. So that gives us the power of testing in automation is nothing but our ability to first identify how the application works and interact with it. After that, it becomes pretty easy. So team, another day or two on this, where we'll do more variables, understanding how it works. Then we will go into keyword driven framework. We'll know more about classes, types, more advanced XPath. Any questions for me before I sign up or sign out rather? I hope you're all aware there's the series of webinars that are going on. So go to iTeLearn.com/webinars. There's one on web services starting tomorrow. So I think you will be able to like that. And there's a lot more webinars, team. So if you're already a member, you should look at being part of them. All right, everyone, where the videos will be posted. So last two videos will be posted in the membership area. I'll have Pavan to create a new page and it'll be posted there. What time tomorrow? Go and check on the iTeLearn.com/webinars page, please. You'll find it there. Thank you, everyone. Bye for now. Talk to you later then. Bye all. See you tomorrow.